Welcome to the Festival of Entrepreneurs, recorded live at the NEC in Birmingham. Over the next few minutes, you'll hear from some of the most incredible founders, investors, and business leaders who joined us this year.
Hi everyone, it's nice to see you, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel alongside such incredible women. My name is Luize, and I'm part of Future Planet Capital. I'm an investment analyst there, and we are a global impact-led venture capital firm with more than 500 million assets under management. And I'm part of the regional team, so I sit in Birmingham, and we back West Midlands-based companies.
Amazing. Over to me. So, morning everyone. I'm Jeanette Linfoot. So, I'm a portfolio entrepreneur, investor, but also a previous life as a corporate CEO in the travel industry, where I was the CEO of the travel division for Saga, FTSE 250, and the MD of the emerging markets for TUI. And today, one of our businesses is Brave, Bold, Brilliant, where we help businesses scale up their teams, their leadership, and their business. So, I have gone from corporate to entrepreneur, which is an interesting journey. So I see both sides of the coin, but lovely to be here, and thank you for having me on the panel.
Hi all, my name is Catalina Valentino. I'm the Group CEO of Elixr. Elixr, essentially, we regenerate towns via a series of different companies that we have, and technology-based, so whether that be looking at energy, whether that be looking at the infrastructure, new buildings, retrofit, and so on. So we typically work with projects of about 500 million and upwards, and we help town leadership to regenerate via technology.
Great, thank you. So, first question, if you guys are ready. I'm sure the audience would want to know what personal or professional experience shaped your decision, Luize, to become an investor? And the same question to you guys in terms of being entrepreneurs.
Sure. So for me, it's actually been sort of a mix. I think, firstly, I've been extremely fortunate to be able to study and work in different countries. So that has helped me to shape my personality, which means I can push myself outside my comfort zone. I am happy taking more risks. That definitely is very helpful when you work in VC. And then another perspective is that my background is more in economics and politics, with a large focus on econometrics, statistics, data. So that allowed me to also network with a lot of other people who work in the industry. I was part of Finance Society, again, networking, learning about different asset classes, and that sort of built my interest in VC. And the combination actually helped me to understand that, yes, this is exactly where I want to go. I want to be in the center of innovation. I want to see different founders, different business models, and that's how I ended up in VC.
Fantastic. Jeanette?
Amazing, yeah. So I guess I'm not the most conventional of entrepreneurs, because I spent 25 years in the corporate running very large global businesses, 500 million turnover, etc. But I think I might have been having a little bit of a midlife crisis. So I was in my mid-40s, and I loved my career. I was very proud of the brands that I'd led and the teams that I'd built. But I just had this feeling that I wanted to start out on my own and have more control of my own destiny, create financial freedom, and ultimately create a portfolio of different businesses. So I think I had a bit of a calling, I had a bit of a moment in time, and I knew that there was life in the old dog yet, so I had the experience of corporate, but I wanted to apply it in an entrepreneurial world with more control over my own destiny. And I knew that I had that drive to want to achieve more, be more, help more, and just really kind of take the other side of the coin from corporate into the entrepreneurial journey. So yeah, probably non-conventional, but both sides of the coin. So yeah, that's my journey.
I could somewhat relate to that, actually, because mine was not conventional in any way, shape or form either, actually. There was no linear trajectory for me. I think most of you might take comfort in knowing that there was no moment in time where I was like, yes, I want to be an entrepreneur. For me, it was like, I think I lost my job in the pandemic, and I was figuring out what to do next. I started a business for 24 hours, which I then ended up not doing or proceeding with, because I realized that I wasn't going to be any good at it. 24 hours later, I then set up a whole different type of company. I actually started with a marketing agency, which a lot of entrepreneurs do. started in that space. I then scaled that company up for a couple of years and raised some investment, still figuring out what I wanted to do very early. I didn't make money for the first 12 months, so that was quite fun. Had to take a few part-time jobs and figure out how I was going to make it work. But eventually it did, and then I met my now co-founder in my current venture and completely went into a whole different world in smart cities. So, for me it was very unconventional because it was, I'd never really started somewhere. I didn't have a moment where I was like, I'm going to do this. I kind of did it. I was like, let me put a website together, let me register a company. It's like, okay, cool, this is the starting point. I kind of kept going from there and then eventually found my first client and, all the nice wins along the way. But it was, there was never a moment, and I wish I had that moment. Some people do have those moments, but I didn't. But I'm still pleased with how I got here today.
And I think that's great, and I think it sort of demonstrates the fact there isn't just a certain way for you to become successful, for you to actually set up a business. Sorry, sorry, 1 second. A bit of a cold. And so that thank you. And I think sort of. But so following on from that sort of observation, obviously when you're going out to secure funding, I would, and it'd be interesting, Luize, from your perspective, when you look at the background of a founder when they come into us, I mean, how important is that versus what the actual the business is and what the expectations are? How do you balance that up?
I think we assess each business opportunity, investment opportunity the same way. Mm-hmm. So we receive a pitch deck and we review the information, and we have fund-specific criteria, like let's say geographical restriction, that we can only back investments that are linked to the region or that there is specific revenue that they need to hit. In our case, it's 100K in the last 12 months. So that helps to sort of narrow down the investments, and then we sort of assess each investment opportunity on its individual basis. Okay. We also look at our portfolio, and we need to think about the risk and return profile that we have. Sure. And we then engage in conversations with the founders. Okay. But the process is the same for each investment opportunity. It starts with the introduction, with a pitch deck, and then we move forward.
So whether male or female, whatever background the founders?
No, we ask the same questions to everyone. We have the same process. So yeah, we have very inclusive philosophy for our fund and for our firm, so we are super happy with that.
That's cool. I mean, and Jeanette, I mean, in terms of moving from corporate, where I guess funding is never a question, to then sort of start, well, to an extent, and then starting your own business. I mean, how's your experience been in terms of securing funding?
Yeah, so I invest in businesses myself. I've also done deals with private equity that are investing in business or buying businesses, and I'll be an advisor on that. So I think there's multiple different scenarios that play out. I mean, clearly you have to have a solid business that is in a growth segment that is scalable, where there's a uniqueness around the offering. I would say that almost that's foundational. Yeah. But I do believe that especially in an early stage of a business, the passion and the energy of the founder and the leadership team is critical, because to a certain extent you are backing that individual for a period of time. So I think the investors that get finance are the ones that can do a compelling pitch, know your numbers, all of that good stuff, but stand out. They have passion, they have energy, they have charisma, and you think, actually, could I go for dinner with that person? Do I want to get into bed with that person? Because it is like a marriage while you're there. Or actually, am I just not gelling with them? So I think it depends if you're investing your own money, and it depends if it's institutional investment. But the reality is you need both. You need a good, solid business with standout, longevity and scalability, but the energy of the founder is also important, especially in the early stages of a business. So if you're going to pitch, bring your energy, bring your passion, bring your love for what you do, know your numbers, and also, create a compelling reason why. Why should someone invest in your business? And I think that's when you secure funding, actually. Okay. And sometimes as women, we're not the best at always shouting about how great we are. So, you know, just a bit of a gender perspective there, which you'll pick on later. But yeah, hope that gives a bit of a perspective.
Fantastic. And Catalina?
I think that innovation and ideas are something that is a great starting point, but ultimately the biggest success factor is the execution of the idea. And to your point as well, you know, it really depends on the founder and the team that you have to execute on that. And we've seen that across, you know, we have 5 companies within our group, and each of those companies has different leadership. And you can see, you know, when you bring somebody new in, if that, you know, increases or decreases the success of that company, especially at the early stages, because it really does depend on those 5 or 6 that you have at the early stages, and then as you scale up from there. And I think that also when you start, you know, you might have a certain skill set that works for the business at the time, but then as you do scale up, you know, you need to start to learn to adapt to the new scale that you're in. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Myers-Briggs. Yeah? Okay, good. That was the reaction I was hoping for. Well, there's also a theory by Thomas Erickson around colors. So the yellow, the green, the red, the blue, and for those of you who don't know that, which I think most of you do, but yellows, you know, seem more creative, more passionate. Reds are sort of more direct, you know, sometimes a bit impatient. You know, your greens are more listening and understanding, and, you know, always kind of there for anything that you want. And then blues are more sort of logical, process-driven. When I started out, I had more of the yellow creativity side, and I think that a lot of founders do, because, you know, they have this excitement, they have this idea, they just start it reckless without, you know, thinking about all the risk scenarios. Great. But then as I scaled up to a certain point, even within 6 months or 12 months, I needed to have more process driven, because it's great having an idea, but you can't actually execute upon that unless you're strategic and you're thinking about the right ways to enter the market. And for me, you know, I advise on a few businesses now as well, and those businesses are like, we want to get global now. And I think we all want that, right? But you need to start with one channel. You know, what's the first target audience that you're going to be looking at? You know, for us, it was like, okay, well, great, we're going to go and focus on the social housing sector for this company, or we're going to focus on council acquisition or whatever, rather than let's get the whole of the UK or let's get the whole of the world. And so taking on those skill sets as I went along was really important. But then also, if you don't have that, you know, you might not have those skill sets, or you might not be able to build upon certain things. Maybe a co-founder is also useful. And so I found that actually, although I was really creative and yellow to begin with, when I met my co-founder, he was more yellow, so I naturally had to become more blue. And I kind of found that a bit annoying, because I wanted to be creative and I had to do the boring, you know, sweeping up and the process stuff. But eventually we both kind of balanced out. He took a bit more of these other sort of positions, and then we've now naturally managed to kind of make a whole color wheel. So I think it is about, you know, finding your strengths, finding out how you can add to those strengths, and obviously as your business, you know, grows, you need to acquire new skill sets as well.
Cool. Great. So, and Luize, what trends are you seeing in the current landscape from an investment perspective?
Yeah, this is a very good question. So there are a few things. I think we definitely see that there are different innovation hubs that are starting to appear apart from London. We've seen that really difference the funding that's available in London and not London. So this is something that we see that would say, therefore, different ecosystems like in Birmingham and Manchester are starting to grow, because we know that there is huge demand for funding. That's something that our fund is also working on, to closing that gap. Another thing that we see is obviously the uncertainty, but that's due to, you know, macroeconomic situation, geopolitics, and that has caused like very high valuations in the past. So because of this uncertainty, obviously you need to be very cautious, because if you have raised money, or if you haven't, but you would probably know that it takes now longer to close the rounds. So what we would definitely advise to give yourself more time to actually get that funding. And when you raise funding, think about the next 18 months, the money that you need at least for the next 18 months. So that's something I definitely give an advice on.
That's a good tip there. Actually, going back, Jeanette, to your sort of comment about the gender differences.
Yeah.
And again, looking at your experience from, you know, the corporate world versus the entrepreneur world, what insights can you bring to the audience?
How long have we got? No, I mean, listen, it's when I started out in my career, you know, when I got my first board position, I was the only woman in the boardroom with a P&L. And with all respect to our colleagues in HR, you know, talent and culture, there tends to be more female HRDs than male, and I would like to see more male actually as well. But I was the only woman with the full accountability for the P&L in a large FTSE 100, and the room was white men in grey suits, broadly. But I had a fabulous career. And my approach was, I know it's changed a lot, thank God, we've made great progress on gender, but it's still a long way to go. On the top 100 companies in this country, there are only 7 female CEOs. That has not changed for 10 years, right? So there's something still wrong at the most senior level of the largest companies in this country. But we have made great progress in terms of women on boards, for sure, right? But I always approached it from a perspective, if I walk into a room thinking there's going to be a problem, then there will be, actually. What can I do? I can do what I say I'm going to do. I can be true to my values. I can lead my team in the right way, and I can do the best for the business that I possibly can. Thereafter, let's see what happens. So that's been my approach. But I would say in the world of entrepreneurialism, it is less, there are more female founders, right? It's more balanced for sure.
Yeah.
Where the challenges come, I think, is in raising finance, right? Because we know that female founders get a very, very, you'll know the data, but get a very, very small percentage of VC capital, for example. So there is still an issue there, but it's a different issue than in the big corporate boardrooms. So, my advice would be stand out for who you are and what you're there to do, and the values you have that are both personal and for the business. Be clear on your why and keep your hand up. Keep your hand up, because you will get knockbacks, you'll get no's. It's just one step closer to a yes. So you have to be resilient, male or female, raising finance, and learn from it. When you get the knockback, okay, you might fall down for a little bit, have a little pity potty, but don't stay there too long. Get up, pull yourself up and go again, because you will get the yes, but you've just got to believe in yourself. So it's the mindset, really. So yeah, it's changed a lot, but we've still got some challenges.
No, I mean, Catalina, what's your experience?
Well, I think there were some excellent points made earlier about choosing the right investor. I think it's so easy to just say yes to any investor because you need the capital, you want to get started with everything. That's kind of the worst mistake that you can make, because is it somebody who's going to fight with you in the trenches, or is it somebody who's going to fight you in the trenches? And that does happen. And sometimes they could be a great person and you can really get along with them, but they might not be able to carry that through into your business or your world, because they might be in a different type of business or entity, and that could carry through. And I've had experiences like that, unfortunately, but you do learn from them. And one of the things that I learned quite quickly is to upskill on legals. That was something that was really useful for me, because when you're negotiating a contract, when you maybe later down the line, if you have to execute upon that contract, it's so vital. And for me, and talking about the skills learning earlier, when we were talking about, what you're missing, what you're not, I learned online. You can just get some courses online. I'm not suggesting you have to, go and be a lawyer, but at least learn the basics, learn about shareholders' rights, learn about dragon tag, learn about all of these things that you need to learn about when it comes to an investment agreement. And so for me, that was really valuable, and it is valuable now. And we work with a global law firm who are amazing, but I'm able to work with them because I know what I'm also talking about, which means that it makes things a lot easier, especially when you obviously have investors coming to the table. So yeah, I think it's really about picking the right investor. That criteria is difficult to kind of put down into bullet points or anything that I could say, but I think you kind of end up understanding what that looks like, and we're all good at making character assumptions, I think. So I think just go with your gut on that.
Cool. So if someone in the audience here has an idea, no network or funding, what's one piece of advice you'd give them to get them started, Luize?
Oh, that's a good question. I think if a person has an idea and they want to work towards that, they should definitely already start building their network, because at the end of the day, that's going to be the key to raise funding. So you need to go out and promote yourself. That's something that I think female founders are really working on, to be outspoken and be vocal about what they are doing, and they're learning from their peers. So really go out there and build those relationships early on. Be in those rooms already, speak with investors, even if you're not raising in the near future, but you're getting there, because you never know where your name can be mentioned in the room. So your network is your network. So that's extremely crucial. So that's my advice.
Jeanette?
Yeah, I would say, if you've got an idea, you need to shape up at least a little bit of a plan. You need to know who your target customers are. What do you do that's different, that creates a reason for someone to want to, actually buy your products or service. So I think you need a little bit of a plan. It doesn't have to be War and Peace, doesn't have to be the perfect business plan, but have a bit of a plan and then get going. Right? Don't wait, because sometimes we hold back, don't we? We wait for the perfect plan, we wait for everything, the perfect moment. Life isn't like that, business isn't like that. So I'm not saying jump off the cliff with no parachute, but make a start, have a simple plan, start, and then learn as you grow. And absolutely, network is your net worth. So get out there, get networking, but make a start and know your numbers through the process as well. Surround yourself with really great people that can help you. Get yourself a mentor, absolutely.
Cool. And Catalina?
I have to agree with all these points, to be honest with you. And also, to add to that, you're not going to know everything, and just accepting that statement is okay, because I don't think anyone knows most of, what they're going to do. Even when it comes to a plan, you can have a plan, and then things change after 1 or 2 months, and then you have to change, make a new plan and make new goals and all this other stuff. So I think starting, just getting on with it, figuring out along the way. The faster you start, the faster you learn. And I know that this is kind of standard advice in some way, but there's a reason why we all say it. It's because you do just have to start and just learn. There's no fast track way of getting there. There's no, if you do these 5 things, you're going to propel yourself and you're going to have an immediately successful business. And maybe accept that the first business that you start might not be successful. You'll learn in that business. That's going to be your learning business. And then you'll go, cool, 2-3 years later, great, now here's all of the things I'd learned over here, I'm going to do them all differently here, and maybe bring in expertise. One thing that we haven't talked about is you don't have to do this alone. You can find advisors or NEDs. Don't be afraid to give up a little bit of equity here and there. All these things are really important to starting a business. It doesn't just have to be you.
Thank you all for being a great audience, and of course, thank you as my panel guests.
Thank you.
Right, have a good day.
Thanks for watching this special episode from the Festival of Entrepreneurs. Our mission is simple: to help founders and business owners grow faster, think bigger, and take action. And if you were part of the event, thank you for joining us and being part of the community. And if you missed it, don't worry. We'll be back with even more ideas, inspiration, and opportunities to help you take your business to the next level. You can find out more and register for future events at festivalofentrepreneurs.co.uk.